And we got to talk about the games that the Pistons are having, because we were talking about the evolution in the Detroit sports scene in general. And I mean, it's never been, I guess, better outlined than by this Pistons team, because I mean, we talked, the turnaround last year was talked about a lot, but I mean, they're taking this into another gear this year, and it's like they continue to surprise us. I don't know what your expectations were. I expected them to be pretty good. It's a wide open East. You and a lot of your colleagues and a lot of the national media kind of covered that aspect, but right now you've got a team that's had a lot of injuries already. Ivy just had his season debut, hasn't been in. They've had some very odd starting lineups so far and some very odd rotations, but they just can't find a way to lose. They're just finding ways to win, and usually winning pretty handily. And if they don't win handily, then Cade steps up in the clutch, like you wrote in your recent article. But what do you make of this team so far?
I'm loving where they're at right now, man. It's been pretty exciting to see how I want to say how quick the turnaround is, but how high the turnaround has gotten for them. I mean, obviously making the playoffs last year for the first time in 5 years, taking the Knicks, down, or not taking them down, but giving them everything they could handle in a 6-game series, and looking like they were basically capable of playing against anybody. And now they're in a position where I think J.B. Bickerstaff's culture, their foundation, and their identity as a defensive-minded team that also doesn't like to play like every other team in the NBA. Like, you see a lot of teams like to shoot a million threes and play the perimeter game. The Pistons play their own game. They play physical on defense, and they wear you out, in the paint. And it's been a successful recipe for them, a great start to the season so far. And, you were talking about the Detroit sports culture. I kind of just love for the Pistons how whenever they are successful, they're like the disruptors of the NBA. Like the Bad Boys were the disruptors for Jordan and Larry Bird and the Lakers with Magic back in the day. Then the 2004 Pistons knocking off Kobe and Shaq. And, the Pistons, doing their thing now in a wide open East where nobody expects them to be as good as they are. And they're taking on the same mantra of those two teams for the Pistons for the past in the same fashion. So it's been really exciting to see it, especially with a young core that's finally coming together, that's finally healthy. It's really exciting to see where they've started off so far this early in the season.
What this is telling me is we need a name for this group, but I don't know. The Going to Work group really had to grow on me. That one, because compared to the Bad Boys, that was really, it was kind of inferior, especially at the beginning, and it was a little wordy. And so, but I think we're going to need a name for this group because, yeah, they do have a similar intensity. And in the modern day, it is hard to play this way. Like, just from a rules standpoint, it's hard to play this way. They really push the envelope. They make the refs make calls, and when they do, that's fine. They're always pretty high on the foul count. Thompson struggled with that. Duran's struggled with that. Even Cade gets a decent amount of fouls because, yeah, they're all playing tough. But I'm amazed that a team can pull this off in the modern day because they've tried to litigate so that they don't have another Bad Boys type team, so that we're not having these battles of the 90s teams of, the Pistons. Then we had the Knicks and the Heat and a lot of these teams that would brawl underneath the hoop. They've kind of litigated that out of the game to a degree, but the Pistons are trying to bring it back here.
Yeah, you were talking about a name for them. So they've had a little nickname for some of their front court guys. They go by the Dog Pound.
Yep, I've heard that one.
Duran and Stu and Rod Holland, Asar, Tobias. But considering how they're playing defensively now, they've kind of all adapted that mindset of a defensive-minded foundation and team. And it seems to be working for them. And like you said, to be doing that in this era as well is not easy. But I've been saying, in my articles and even on my YouTube page as well, Top Title Detroit, I've been saying I feel like the way the Pistons are playing is kind of saving the NBA. Because if you just look at a lot of superstars, there's a lot of great talent around the league. There's a lot of great players, a lot of really fun people to watch, but they do some lazy habits like the foul baiting thing where they're kind of just flailing into contact to get free throws and not really playing a real systematic style where they just kind of come down and shoot a bunch of threes or find one-on-one looks. The Pistons actually run sets. They have real communication. They have actual flow and movement through their team that has everybody involved. And of course they have guys that can go get their own. Cade is one of the best one-on-one players in the league. Ivy's a good one-on-one player. Duren's finding his rhythm as an offensive scorer. But it's really refreshing to see that, like you said, that kind of style from the 90s or the early 2000s, that can still work. Not granted, the league just pushes back on it a little bit. They definitely call a lot of fouls, but it's granting them winning basketball right now. And I think it's something that can be sustained, especially for a young team like they have right now.
Cough, cough, James Harden with that foul baiting thing. There's others, but no, I'm with you because I like this style. I've always liked this style of game, and I think that's a great point because the toughness is not underrated. The toughness is highlighted a lot in this team, but when you've got guys like Duren and Thompson and Stewart, the same guys that want to be these dog pound guys, they really like a nice kind of like Hoosiers style back cut with a pass underneath. Like they really like a nice passing game. So for guys that want to be gritty and tough and bang underneath, they have a great feel for the game. That's one thing that I always kind of lamented with people for Duren, because he comes into the league, he's got an NBA body, he's a young guy, but he looks older, he looks bigger, he looks tougher. So I think people are trying to get him ready sooner than he was, but then it was, oh, well, he's a back to the basket guy, he's a rebounder, but he always had a nice feel for the game. He has he has an underrated handle. He's got good vision for a big guy, and Stewart and some of those other guys seem to have that same thing, which is amazing because with the way they play, to be able to slow down and also be able to see that cutter and not only have Cade, who's one of the game's best passers, be able to hit all these people for an alley-oop or a nice pass. They'll get Cade on an alley-oop or they'll get Cade on a nice pass underneath. It's not just Cade that has to control the offense. Arguably, he's the one that's the impetus in the passing because that's the offense he's created, but it's nice to see everybody else participating.
Yeah, you see that in today's league where people talk about being positionless, but normally that kind of applies to who you guard defensively. Offensively, it's like you said, it's very different. Like we saw Jalen Duren talk to the media during media day, and he said J.B. Biggerstaff kind of gave him the green light to open his game up. So now when he snatches the ball, off the glass for a defensive rebound, he's not always looking for Cade to, okay, come get the ball and bring it up. No, he's bringing it up the floor and setting the table on offense. Or, they'll let Tobias bring it up, or Asar, which has helped them a lot because we know Cade Cunningham is one of the most double-team and triple-team players in the NBA. So they've needed to kind of expand and have other guys step up and kind of, take the reins to create some of that space for Cade. And even having Ivy back now as well, that just kind of opens them up a little bit more to be even more unpredictable. And like what they always talk about, when you have that buy-in and when you want to play for each other and, you're able to, like you said, spread the ball around, set the screens, do the dirty work kind of stuff to, set up your teammates. Like those are the kind of things that show how special this team can be and how focused and locked in they are. Because while people talk so much about them potentially making a move and maybe making a splash trade and whatnot, when you have chemistry and the cohesiveness of a team with the depth that they have and an incredible coach that they have, it limits the necessity to plunge for those kind of huge deals. It's not to say that they can't, improve in certain areas of their roster, but it just kind of gives them that freedom to say, hey, we could make a move right now, but the ball is in our court. We're winning and playing great basketball. We're growing young players. We're really figuring this out, and we're playing, winning basketball, which is something they've been aiming to do for years. So it's really encouraging to see, given the position that they're in right now with this young foundation.
It is amazing. I mean, it's now people are already talking about the trade deadline, and I do want to talk about that a little bit if they would make a move. So I think we'll take a quick break and kind of come back with that, because I agree with you. I mean, I think there's a lot of things about this team that are showing they don't necessarily need one, but you also maybe need to consolidate some pieces to get different guys some more minutes and more looks. So we'll come back with Eric Vincent of Clutch Points, and we'll be right back. Keep on listening to Sports Intel on Jethro FM. And looking at I follow your writing on there, but I was bouncing around to some of the other articles. And one of the things that gave me a little bit of a chuckle was there was an article there by, I think, one of your colleagues over there talking about how Kendrick Perkins was talking about the possibility of an Anthony Davis trade to the Pistons, and I've seen this from two places. I've seen it there. Kendrick Perkins, presumably he was the one that started it, and then also NBA Centel. So I don't know what to make of that. Those are my two sources, because NBA Centel is notorious for making things up that sound kind of real. So I don't know what to do with those things, but I'm in your camp, Eric. This is a team that's working really well, and if you're going to bring a piece in, especially a big piece like that, you got to make sure it fits in the chemistry of the team here.
Yeah, that's a big question mark for him right now. And I don't even want to say it's a question mark, because I feel like Trajan Langdon and the Pistons have been able to accelerate their winning process so much right now, to the point where Trajan should probably be on the phone, entertaining some calls and some ideas. But based on how they've started thus far, I don't think they need to be the ones initiating these kind of calls. So, yeah, maybe there was a conversation that what Kendrick Perkins was talking about for an Anthony Davis. But I feel like it was the Dallas Mavericks who may have initiated that, because when you're sitting number one in the East and it's based on the back of your young core and the young foundation that you have, that's the most important thing you want for this team. That's more important than the team winning and it being on the back of, like, the veterans. Like, it would be a problem for the Pistons right now if Tobias Harris was scoring like 25 a game, or Karis LeVert had to score 20+. And, like, Duren was, struggling in foul trouble and didn't really have an offensive flow to his game. The fact that the young guys, on this core have proven and shown that they're, valuable for the ways that they're needed, whether it's Asar's defense or, Ivy's, versatile offense, or the lob capability and the offensive capability for Duren, and then the MVP level play of Cade Cunningham, knowing that you see that greatness from them and you've kind of answered that question, it shows how far that they've come. Now the next question is, how far can they take it? Because, unfortunately, we didn't get to see Ivy versus the Knicks. We didn't see Beef Stew in that series against the Knicks in the playoffs. So if they can stay healthy and kind of, ride this out and see where it takes them, that's really the biggest priority for this team. And, again, as we've been saying, it's taking them in a winning direction, which is their most important thing.
Well, that's the only type of trade that I would want to see if they were going to do something, is more a consolidation of the pieces, because they've had kind of the perfect scenario where they've been winning without some of those key pieces. They haven't had to lean heavily on a lot of the veterans. Those guys have gotten rest, which is nice. And now we've had some feature roles for guys like Dennis Jenkins and Paul Reed, and Javonte Green has gotten a lot of minutes, showing that these guys, they're not going to be maybe the next stars or whatever, although we're hearing a lot about Dennis Jenkins right now. It shows the value of them to their own team, so then you can maybe consolidate some pieces and say, okay, we can depend on those guys for more minutes, so we know we can subtract this guy and this guy. These contracts work out, and we'll bring in a valuable piece that can also be part of the rotation. But I will say that probably wouldn't be Anthony Davis in my mind. It would be somebody else that would be more of a rotation player. He's a guy that seems to not necessarily be a culture guy. He's more of like he's more of the LeBron style to me, that the sum of the individuals has to be greater than the parts, where they've got to put all those stars together and then it eventually works. Whereas the Pistons are kind of the opposite, where the sum of the parts are greater than the individual parts. But it's interesting because, like you said, they didn't have Stewart last season for the playoff run, and they didn't have Ivy and Thompson really at the same time healthy, and now they haven't had that yet this season because Ivy's just getting back in, and that's another piece that we have to see how that fits, and more minutes they're going to have to find, because they have done very well without him, but he's going to be a very welcome addition back to the court too, because like you said, it's funny because I feel like one of the main points of conversation in the offseason was, well, they need a secondary ball handler. They need somebody that can take the pressure off of Cade. Now they've brought in LeVert. Dennis has really risen to the occasion with his injury minutes, and now you've got Ivy coming back. Now they almost have too many. I don't think that's a need anymore. I don't know about you.
Yeah, I don't really think it's a bad thing to ever have, too many creators, especially when they buy in and understand the flow of the game. Because, even back to last season, when they lost Ivy, they lost another, primary ball handler on their team, but they went and got Dennis Schroeder, who was a godsend for them. He was fantastic in the playoffs, really good in late stretches in fourth quarters to help close games for him next to Cade Cunningham. And, obviously he's in a different situation now, but, with the other guys around him now stepping up, whether it was Asar stepping up as a ball handler, Ivy coming back and, kind of taking the reins and being more comfortable as a ball handler. And again, we've talked about Duren as well. He's been comfortable enough to do that as well. Dennis Jenkins, it's really been a much needed improvement for them, because again, it's really tough seeing Cade kind of take on as many triple teams and double teams as he does. It really adds to a lot of the turnovers that he had, and it adds to how tired he kind of gets seemingly when he plays late in games. So, knowing that they've finally got some extra help to be able to kind of take that pressure off of him is huge. And if they are to kind of, pull the trigger on one of those kind of moves, again, I definitely don't think it'll be an Anthony Davis kind of player. It's going to be the in Trey Langdon, tenure for the Pistons, because obviously the core that's set up right now, it was set up under Troy Weaver. And for the most part, Trey, I don't think hasn't had to, make a ton of big moves yet based on the injuries they've had and based on the success that they've had. So when they do make that move, again, a lot of the names I'm not really a huge fan of. I'm not a huge fan of the Lauri Markkanen idea. Obviously, Andy Davis is another one I think that just came up that I wasn't a huge fan of. So they have to find that perfect piece, whoever it is, but they're in a position right now where they don't need to rush it based on the success they're having.
The nice part is they have a lot of these guys that have filled roles where it's harder to see what they actually need, because these guys have all risen to the occasion and filled in for each other so well. Jeff, you've been shaking your head at these options. You're not a big fan of the Anthony Davis. I think this is unanimous. So you're not a big fan of that idea either. That one cracked me up, because the fact that NBA Centel also cited that, it's like, wait, this is a rumor and a spoof at the same time.
I have to imagine that they would, what Dallas would want in return, and Anthony Davis cannot stay healthy. There is just no way. All he would do is he'd be the water boy on the bench, and that Markkanen is the same way. They'd have to give up too much. I think personally, Duren's play, I don't think they expected him to be this much better than last year, but he worked his tail off in the offseason, and I think he's exceeded expectations, and I think it really makes it hard to give up so much for a player when Duren has really stepped up his game, especially offensively.
I agree. And Eric, one of my favorite things about the lineup that's changed from last year to this year to a degree is the fact that they're playing Stu and Duren together more. And I think that's going to punish some opposing defenses, because like you said, those guys play tough. And the fact that they've grown enough where they can work on the court at the same time, offensively and defensively, is impressive on both sides.
Yeah, that's been an extremely encouraging development for him. Stu was really excited last season to come off the bench and kind of focus on being, the five, for the second unit. But when Tobias went down with his injury, it opened up an opportunity for him to kind of go back to that stretch four role. But he still played to his identity. I feel like when he tried it the first time under Monty Williams, it really wasn't comfortable for him, because he was looked at as a primary shooter for the team, and that just really isn't what he is. He's a banger down low. He likes to do the dirty work and, chasing and scrapping for offensive rebounds. Obviously one of the best defenders in all of basketball, even for a six-man, one of the best rim protectors in all of basketball. And knowing that him and Duren have kind of taken some leaps in terms of their offensive game as well has been phenomenal. Like we talked about what JD has done, but then Stu, who's, excelling a little bit more as a shooter. One of the concerns I had like a couple years ago when he was, was getting extended minutes with Cade. Cade loves throwing the lob, and it really was kind of discouraging at times where Duren will be hurt, and they kind of lost that with Stu because he's a lot smaller. But now he's dunking everything. He's playing above the rim. He's playing nasty. He's got the confidence to kind of create his own shot. And he's in sync with Cade when those pick and rolls, come into play, and he's able to take those pocket passes and finish them over the rim. It's been really exciting to see them kind of be in sync so well. And it goes to Cade's credit as well, because Cade has, of all, stars and superstars in the NBA, he's never had another co-star next to him, and he's still been able to put up all-star level numbers despite the circumstances. Whether it's young guys around him, veterans like Tobias Harris, Malik Beasley, or Tim Hardaway Jr., Duncan Robinson, guys that are kind of like cast-off veterans to some extent, but he's still able to produce and now play winning basketball. Or even a guy like Dennis Jenkins, who's a two-way G League guy, who's now looking like he could possibly be on the NBA roster as well. It's just really exciting to see how they've all managed to fit in and expand their games. And again, it's taking them in a winning direction and showing how great they can be in this Eastern Conference.
I'm glad you kind of ended that point with Cade, because you had a great article about him scoring in the clutch, and obviously he's doing everything for this team, and he's the one that makes it go. It's like we're getting so used to his greatness that then we don't talk about it as much. We talk about, oh, well, Duran's playing better than we thought. Oh, Stewart's got a more well-rounded game. Oh, Thompson defensively, whatever it is. But I mean, yeah, Cade's the rising tide that's lifting all of his teammates as the boats there, and he's impressive to watch. I'm glad we have him on our team. But I appreciate you joining the show, Eric, and I appreciate all the great points and the great conversation. Want to give you a chance to make sure to tell people where they can follow you here. We'll try to have you back on as the season progresses here to get an update and see how things are going. But want to make sure to highlight the YouTube presence and the clutch points as well.
Anytime, man. Thank you so much for having me on the show. It's been an awesome experience, man. You guys can follow me at I am Eric Vincent on my social media. My YouTube page is called Top Title Detroit. You can check out my coverage on there for the Pistons, some Lion stuff as well on there. And, of course, all my writing and coverage for the Pistons on clutchpoints.com. Really appreciate the time, y'all. Maybe we can get a little Monopoly war next time we can have a conversation. It'll be a good time. Let's make that happen.
I like it. Jeff's laughing. I think he likes that idea. But you seem like such a nice guy. I just don't know. I mean, maybe at 42 I can handle a kind of normal game of Monopoly. I say that, and then everything's going to be flying through the air. But we'll have to have you talk some lines at some point too, because I didn't realize you covered them as well. We could have had you cover the Jameis Winston experience that we talked about a little bit in the first segment, because I usually like watching it because it's like watching it's like a roller coaster, but man, that was mostly going up on Sunday. So I was kind of impressed by Jameis here.
Yeah, that had me at a daily heart attack watching that game. I'm glad they came out with the win. Not really happy about how it came apart, but I'm happy they at least got it finished and get what they needed to get done. So hopefully they turn the tide. They need the momentum that the Pistons have right now, but they got a lot of work to do. So hopefully they turn that around, because they needed this in this competitive NFC right now.
Yeah, who knew the Pistons were going to be the grittier team for this period that they've been playing at the same time here.
Right.
So, both have a gritty identity, but yeah, this run that the Pistons are off to is amazing. So yeah, we'll make sure to have you back on as the season progresses, and we appreciate you joining the show.
Thanks, fellas. Y'all have a good night. Take care.
All right, you too. Thanks, Eric.